Hey, it's Jer. Welcome to your Daily Detroit for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. On today's show, how to support local and eat some tasty turkey or other eats this Thanksgiving. Brenna Houck from Eater Detroit stops by to guide us on where to go and talks about how restaurants and bars are getting ready for, well, everything that's happening. But first, some stories to know around town right after we give a big thanks to Clayton for upping his support at patreon.com/dailydetroit. Also, Debbie for joining as a member. You are both so very awesome. You can be like Clayton and Debbie at patreon.com/dailydetroit and fund local coverage from our very community. Let's get started. First, we need to do a roundup of what's happening with the coronavirus. Both testing and hospital space is becoming more scarce throughout the Detroit region as cases increase locally and statewide. In Michigan, there were nearly 7,500 new cases reported Tuesday, with 79 additional deaths. That brings our pandemic totals to more than 272,000 cases and 8,128 deaths. But it's not just cases you need to watch out for. You need to look at that hospital space. COVID Act Now reports that half of intensive care unit beds are currently being used by COVID-19 patients, and some hospitals will need to start winding down non-essential services soon to allow for more space for coronavirus patients. Our tracing capacity is now basically non-existent at just 3% of the tracers Michigan needs to find out where all of the virus is coming from. The Tri-County's order of counties that are still experiencing outbreaks has not changed since yesterday, and it's still first Macomb, Oakland, and then Wayne. In Macomb, the city of Warren has notified that their operations and staff will be working from home and remotely as much as possible until further notice to help control an outbreak. Sterling Heights is closing a variety of offices and scaling back the hours on others through the start of the new year. They strongly encourage residents to do as many services as possible remotely and online through their website. Macomb County has also expanded free no-appointment testing to 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, at their Mount Clemens facility at 380 North Rose Street. Big picture, there's also new legal resistance to Governor Gretchen Whitmer's 3-week pause. The Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association has filed a suit in federal court seeking an emergency halt to the state health department's order that would keep indoor service shuttered through December 8th. The association and 2 companies are behind the action: Heirloom Hospitality Group, think the higher-end townhouse restaurant with locations in Detroit and Birmingham, as well as Prime and Proper, and then the owner of Suburban Inns, HIH. We'll continue to follow this one as it's filed by a large industry lobbying group and in federal court. A former vice president of the United Auto Workers, 72-year-old Joe Ashton, was sentenced to 2.5 years in federal prison on Tuesday. The sentence is for taking $250,000 in kickbacks from a union vendor. It's the 15th conviction of auto industry leaders in what has been a wide-ranging federal investigation into corruption. The scheme involved what's known in corporate circles as the trinkets and trash industry. Think the giveaways companies do of keychains, hats, USB drives, and all of that stuff. The auto industry has been in the sights of the FBI for years, but experts think this action may be near the end of the work. 2 former UAW presidents have also been convicted of crimes, as well as a number of Fiat Chrysler executives. Over time, it's been shown union funds were stolen, and union leaders received bribes and benefits from both contractors and auto company executives. Detroit-headquartered StockX is continuing to expand globally. The stock market of things is opening 2 new authentication centers in the economic hub cities of Hong Kong and Toronto. The centers verify that goods are legit and authentic before being offered on their digital stock exchange that gets, according to the company, 25 million visitors a month. The company pushed a self-reported record $2.5 billion in merchandise in June and has expanded beyond shoes and apparel to collectibles. StockX, founded in part by Dan Gilbert, is widely seen as a rising star, with a valuation from investors north of $1 billion. Their co-founding CEO, Josh Luber, recently left the company, and it's widely expected that StockX will do an IPO of their own soon. Their new CEO said it's an objective of the company. 2 firms are moving their Detroit offices to a historic building on East Grand River in downtown Detroit. And yes, before I get emails, East Grand River does in fact exist. It's a short street between Woodward and the Detroit Athletic Club. The historic mid-rise is at 230 East Grand River, which had a former life as loft apartments and a sports bar before sitting empty for a time. It'll be occupied by accounting firm UHY and commercial real estate firm Signature Associates. Built as a cigar factory, this building was known as the Hemmeter Building. Many do not know that Detroit's biggest industry was cigar production in 1911 when this opened. It's one of the few of the time period left mostly untouched on the outside, and I'll link in the show notes the history from historicdetroit.org. So back to what's happening today. UHY and Signature will be moving in the first part of 2021. The space will also be a partnership of sorts, allowing for clients of theirs to have easy access to both kinds of their services, which, frankly, often interlock together in this world. There's also apparently a rooftop space for clients. All right, so here's a personal story, and this is not a UHY or Signature thing. This is not about them, but I have been in that Paradise Valley Park recently, which I know it was at one time known as Harmony Park. I was there a couple of weeks ago. It has a ton of potential as a true urban park of the quality you'd see in any global city. But I got to be honest with you, listeners, and this is very real talk. With a name to honor Paradise Valley and such, it deserves some regular maintenance. That thing's got overflowing garbage cans. There's stuff that needs repair. It's such a cute little triangle, and there's so much more that could be done with it with just, frankly, just clean it up, pick up the trash. It has become a great spot for a couple of rat friends of mine named Ralph and Marge. And yes, I actually named them after a recent trip to La Casa Cigars across the street. So yeah, it's a real thing. And I'm going to fully admit that I'm using my platform to shame somebody, the city, these companies, someone, into actually just, picking up the trash. So thanks so much for listening to my TED Talk. Joining me on the line is Eater Detroit's Brenna Houck. Welcome back to Daily Detroit.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
So one of the biggest feedback points we get on the show is, how can I support the businesses around me, the local shops, all that kind of stuff in these difficult times? And what you have, and I want to talk to you about this, is an ever-growing list. It is the essential guide to Thanksgiving 2020 in Southeast Michigan. And I'm just so glad that you did this. What was kind of the impetus, and where'd you start with it?
We always do guides like this every year for Thanksgiving, obviously. Like, there is a small proportion of people who decide that they don't want to cook and would rather either go out to eat Thanksgiving somewhere or order their pies from a local bakery, things like that. So we're really always updating that every year. But what was different this year is obviously COVID-19 has really created a complicated holiday season. Every single holiday this year has been, to quote literally every article, a little different. So what I really wanted to do here was provide an explainer for people on whether it's okay to gather with friends and family, and then also like how they can support local businesses in Detroit, Metro Detroit, in Ann Arbor during this time. And I think what's interesting this year is you're seeing some restaurants that have never done any sort of packaged food to go for Thanksgiving or otherwise coming together and coming up with a Thanksgiving feast to go. So you can get some really interesting meals this year.
Yeah, there's so many more names this year than I think in previous years I thought about. I like that there is a lot of creativity with chefs and people doing this stuff in Metro Detroit, right?
Yeah, you can get, you could get just sides from Lady of the House if you wanted and mix it up with like some desserts from Rose's Fine Foods. You could go to Keep Growing Detroit and get, a package of veggies to cook at home, make your meal at home. There's places that are doing just individual meals for plates for people who maybe are not interested in getting a huge meal this year because maybe it's just themselves at home on Zoom with family and they just want to support a local restaurant, not worry about cooking this year, and eat something tasty.
Yeah, and what I like is just the variety of places, right? Because, it's something where these small businesses all are looking for different ways to serve people right now, and especially with this 3-week pause, buying local is more important than ever.
For the first time this year, to be honest, I decided to order a restaurant meal for Thanksgiving. Part of it was that I was tired of cooking, but also part of it was just like, wanting to support a local business. If I can, I could spend a tiny bit more, not that much more than I would to go to the grocery store and get, a meal for me and my partner to sit at home and enjoy. And it'll be different than what I would have come up with for cooking every year. So I think there is an opportunity here for people who are staying home and are maybe a little bit like lonely or bummed out about that to really lean into whatever food they love and get more of that this year, right? So like if you don't want turkey, you can get like a duck this year. Or if you want a full vegan Thanksgiving meal, you can get that this year. And I mean, I went with a vegetarian meal. So I'm trying to go meatless this year. And I'm excited about that. So that's one thing to look forward to in a year that has been kind of difficult for everyone mentally and emotionally.
You know what I'm excited about? And I'm going to throw some family under the bus here. I have no problem doing it. I have an Aunt Dryanne because her turkey is so dry. And it's a running gag in the family for Aunt Dryanne. And so this year there will be no dry turkey from Aunt Dryanne.
No dry turkey. I'm okay with that. A year without turkey is okay with me. I know that that's a controversial opinion for some, but I also, I think I've already mentioned, I advocate for smaller birds if you're cooking just for 1 or 2 people. Like a duck is very festive. I've done that before, and I tend to think it tastes better than turkey personally.
Well, the smaller birds are just functionally easier to handle. When you've got a giant bird like that, it's hard to get all the way through it, just from a purely practical perspective.
Yeah, there's just a lot to it. Although I do have a coworker who's talking about just buying like a huge turkey and seeing how many meals she can make with it over the next 4 or 5 weeks. So, you could always freeze it, I suppose, but you could get a whole seafood meal if you wanted from Voyager. There's all sorts of different things going on right now.
One of the ones I looked at, which I am excited, is the Pierogi. I know I've butchered that last name, but it's in your list there. And it's great. Maybe do something different. Do a Thanksgiving pierogi, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of that. She does those every year. The holiday special is the pierogi. But I think that it would be fun to like do that as a main course or a side or something if you wanted, in addition to like your other fun meals for the year. So there's a lot of opportunity to kind of mix and match things and have fun with it if you want. And obviously this year with this halt in indoor dining that just came down on Sunday, it goes into effect on Wednesday. And also in general, just like the difficulty of getting people booked for, indoor dining at all. Like there wasn't much interest in indoor dining even before this. I think that this is an opportunity to help support restaurants in a unique way and kind of keep them afloat. They are not getting that influx of bookings from holiday parties this year. So that's going to be a big thing. And maybe like thinking towards Christmas too, or Hanukkah, there's definitely going to be meals like this coming up for those holidays as well. And it might be worth kind of poking around and seeing what the options are. The key though is you have to order these in advance. So you're kind of running out of time here. You got about a week left to get your orders in for a lot of these places, because they need time, obviously, to prep your food.
And I will repeat that for listeners. Go look at this list and go pick your orders this week. Like, get it done, because I think it's important to not be disappointed and have to listen, you don't want to be running to the grocery store for slices of turkey, because that's all that's left a couple of days before Thanksgiving. Don't let yourself be sad like that if you don't have to.
No extra visits to the grocery store if you can right now, please.
Right, exactly. You were mentioning about what happened on Sunday. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what have you gotten the sense with things? One of the things that I noticed is the number of establishments that were moving to carry out even before this order came down. It was kind of stunning to me, as someone who follows a bunch of places because I like to eat, is that the number of these places that were already moving to carry out only even before this happened?
It's probably a number of factors, but I spoke to a business owner last week, I want to say, at Detroit Street filling station in Ann Arbor, who decided to close down their outdoor seating. They actually didn't have indoor seating and go completely back to takeout and delivery. It was a safety concern. They were seeing all the businesses around them starting to, have positive cases among their staff members. It just felt like the right time to go back to carry out. And they're fortunate that they had a robust system for that. I think a lot of other business owners still are kind of sussing out how to do that and do it successfully because, carry out is not ideal for a lot of different types of restaurants. And it also impacts employment and all of these sorts of things. So obviously the halt in dine-in service is going to make that decision, clearer for some businesses. I have seen a few that have announced that they're temporarily closing altogether this morning, and some that are switching back to carry out again, or kind of meeting with each other to try to figure out what the best move is to go forward. Because, outdoor dining, you can do it for a little while, but it's unclear how much longer that will be, something that is pleasant to do. It's also, limits their seating. A lot of businesses expanded outdoors this year to try to reclaim some of the seats that they lost inside. And now they've lost half those seats again. So maybe we'll see more patio expansion. But really what businesses need right now is some sort of bailout or support from the government in some way, workers especially, because a lot of workers are most likely, because of this dine-in closure, going to be laid off for a while again. If they weren't already unemployed, they might be now. And it's just going to be a really tough winter.
That bailout piece is something that I know some listeners, I got feedback from multiple people over the last week that why are we continually circling back to the policy side of things? They feel like there's nothing that they can do. But I would argue that if you really care about your servers and your restaurant businesses, it's amazing how a well-placed direct letter to the person that represents you, whether it's federally or statewide, can have a lot of impact. Because I don't think we can avoid this policy. The reality is that we can't just buy more tacos to get out of this situation.
No. I mean, the amount of investment that's gone into this, all these changes and everything, they cost a lot of money to businesses and the service industry in general. And so they're eating those costs right now. They're trying to, pivot. There are a few grants out there, but not everyone is getting them, and not equally necessarily. What we really need is a comprehensive bailout at this point to get us through this. And it's not clear if that's going to happen or it's going to look the way that businesses want it to, small businesses in particular.
Well, until this vaccine or something like that becomes widely available, should businesses and especially in the restaurant business, should they really think that this kind of open, close, or kind of more closed situation is the new normal? I was really surprised to see the number of places that opened up this year with indoor service.
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well. I think that the businesses that have been most successful during this pandemic have been the ones that have kind of accepted the situation as it is and found ways to thrive in spite of it in different ways by changing their service format. But, it's hard as business owners. I understand, you open a business, you work for many years towards that goal, and you want your restaurant or bar to feel a certain way. You're trying to create a certain atmosphere and experience, and to have that all taken away in 1 year is very difficult and probably hard to swallow. I think for now, the wisest plan of action, I would say, is to think of ways to adjust businesses to be more successful during this pandemic. Look into ways to work together to create delivery systems or get your menu online so people can order things curbside. All of that needs to happen.
Yeah, that digital piece I think is so important. I've been surprised when I've tried to support some local places and they don't have the basics of the online stuff. And I think it's just like so crucial to do that right now.
It's crucial for a number of different reasons, like just in basics, the communication piece of it. A lot of small business owners, they're used to running things in a certain way, but when things are changing on a dime, when the situation is changing unexpectedly, a lot of customers are going to those websites or, Facebook pages to look for answers and not necessarily seeing the type of communication that they need all the time. So it's really important to communicate to your customer and, make sure that you're updating them on what your situation is at any given point, because otherwise they're not necessarily going to order from you.
Right. And every order counts right now. And speaking of that, make sure, people, you check out the Essential Guide to Thanksgiving 2020 in Southeast Michigan. Brenna Houck is updating it for you on a regular basis and make some great tasty selections locally. Brenna, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And that's it for your Daily Detroit. I'm Jer Stays. If you've got feedback, voicemail 313-789-3211. Email jer@dailydetroit.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to our brand new members. Take care of each other, and we'll talk tomorrow. I got something special for you.